Hello YouTubers, this is Captain Jaws making my very first play video. It's not necessarily a Let's Play video, but so much as an impression video. I know I've seen a lot on YouTube of people who have played a little bit of Fallout 4, and their impression of the game isn't very high. A lot of this has to do with either difficulty in the beginning of the game, difficulty with the settlement setup, or they believe that they're not getting enough instruction from the game itself in order to be able to accomplish things. So what I decided to do was make a video highlighting some of the things that I think are very impressive about this game that they've added on to from the others that came before it, or some of the drawbacks of the game where they definitely could have improved, and it almost seems like they chose not to. The very first thing that I noticed as being an upgrade would be that they added different character loadings, meaning that you can have separate characters with their own load files, and it's not just a list of loads like the way it is in, say, Skyrim, or, if I'm remembering correctly, the other Fallout games. This meant that when you wanted to load your save file from before, you either had to load from the most current save file, which is the one at the top of the save list, or you had to scroll down to find perhaps another character and the last save file you made with them, and sometimes that can be a little frustrating. I know that I would have multiple characters, like you see here. I like to have a lot of characters, and they would just end up getting lost in the mix. I know a video game should never need you to go into its file list and delete manually lists and lists and lists of save files, just so that you can organize them to find your characters. To give you an idea of how much game time I've spent playing this game, I've got 4 days on my main character. And split up between my other characters, you'll see anywhere from just a few hours to a little more than a full day. I've spent at least 1 full week of game time learning this game in and out. So we're going to load Betty Boop. It's not my most played through character, but it's the one that I've spent the most time on with the most current amount of knowledge. Loading, loading, loading. Always lots of loading. Well, it's faster than Xbox. Ah. Alright, this spot you will see quite a bit in a future video, but let's get out of here for right now. Nothing coming down. Alright. Now what I've done is I've made a high charisma character just to see how it would go. High charisma, medium intelligence, medium luck, and very high perception with, I think I had medium strength, just enough in strength that I'd be able to carry things. That was where I threw my last couple of points. Mainly what I wanted was 9 charisma. I wanted enough intelligence to be able to pick up the science perk, and I wanted enough luck to be able to get the, gosh, I don't know what you call it, the, the lucky levels. Where is it? Let's go ahead and take a look at that page. Now, initially when I built my character, I'm level 32 now. The very first points that I put in were incredibly, not even situational, but just useless. I took local leader. I took points in cap collector. I put Black Widow. And I didn't even start getting useful probably until level 10 or so. I put points into Scrounger. And then I started putting points in armor and gun nut. So here I was, I'm developing weapons, I'm developing scrap, and I'm having terrific time with my dialogue options, but I had almost 0 survivability. Now, of course, in the beginning of the game, it's very difficult to run around in power armor, so you can imagine how very hard it was to be able to play through even just the very first raiders, completely demolished. So let's go back to the map here. The cool thing that I was able to do is as soon as I got Preston Garvey and I did survive and make my way back to Sanctuary with him, I was able to begin all of the Minutemen farm and settlement acquisition quests. Every time I got to a new settlement, because I had that first point in local leader, I was able to immediately send somebody back to Sanctuary and open up all of my resources. This meant that every settlement instantly got a generator and a recruiting beacon. and that every settlement was able to have basic requirements developed for its settlers, so that in the future, outside of maybe Greentop Nursery and a couple other places that have just way too many settlers in there already, so in the future I wouldn't have to come back in and do any more development. I want to spend all my time only on Sanctuary. So let's go there now. Just in case you didn't know this, you can move and play with the items in your load screen. Alright, good old Sanctuary. I think the same things that everybody else has done. We'll blow through that information as quickly as possible. Scrap the entire everything first and leave nothing behind. One of the cool things that I learned is that when you're scrapping a container, and I can't believe I did not notice this through almost my entire first playthrough, about 4 days. When you scrap a container, it will automatically send the contents of that container into your workshop, meaning that you don't have to spend time looting. And that's what happens when you have too many provisioners in that one gate. That's just for fun. So that makes the initial time scrapping up your settlement in order to clean it out very fast. And for no reason at all, this is where I chose to put my beacon. Now,
yes,
I think everybody farms here, right? If not, you should be. It's great, it's close by, and it's a backyard. It's everybody's backyard. I've got just enough corn and
I wouldn't be very
just enough potatoes that I'm able to keep a steady supply of adhesives using the trick of breaking or cooking that into cutting fluid and then breaking that down. There are multiple ways to get into my camp. There's the back entrance.
Can't take much more.
I wish I knew what you really want up here.
There is also what I would call the side entrance, although it is based off of the main entrance. This leads up into the under construction area. Only one level 4 merchant so far. But the important place is right in here. I'm sure by now you've seen the defense of this tower is impeccable. We got living quarters. And what's great is these folks actually have been picking up the food that I've been setting around my camp, and they've been carrying it apparently. They also have been picking up things off the tables and moving them. The only exception seems to be Russell's note is still sitting right there. Just these guys, they're comfortable. They've got a place to write their own feelings and thoughts down. An area where they can spend time together and communally talk about how great their living conditions are. And then up here is the restaurant / relaxing area. So this is to show you what it looks like when you spent enough time building in Fallout 4. Got electric up there, and electric down here. And that's it. Not necessarily showing off, but I would like to use the things that you've just seen as examples to discuss some of the good and the bad. Number one, this system is entirely flawed. As much fun as it is to build in Fallout 4, and as much success as you can have, as you can see, the difficulty of preparing all of this is absolutely insane. The kind of struggles that you have to go through in order to be successful in your construction, a lot of them seem like they're outdated struggles, things that have already been taken care of in other games like Minecraft, things that just should not exist in a new game. For example, object clipping. You'll find that the game is either way too forgiving or entirely unforgiving with it. I found that one of the most difficult objects to work with, let's see if I can find it here. There it is. One of the most difficult objects for me to work with has been the Nuka-Cola machine. Look how far away this thing has to be placed. I mean, that is just... Why? I can walk entirely behind it. It's entirely unforgiving with any kind of clipping. It won't let you get anywhere near another object. Not even close. And it does not have any good reason for it. However... You take, let's put that away somewhere. You take a different object, like, let's say... a smoking sign. Where's some of the weird places I've put this? This can be placed on some weird things. Like that. And even an occasional larger item. For example, this junked fence is clearly clipped a lot into this shack foundation. Junk fences do not come this small. They are absolutely no less wide than probably this guard tower. So, as nice as that looks, I'm very happy with that. That is what I would expect to be able to do with it, especially after you've traveled enough in the Fallout 4 environment. As you find, for example, raider settlements or any kind of pre-constructed settlement, the devs definitely have a different set of building tools than what we've been given. Their tools are a lot more forgiving, and they seem to make a lot more sense. Now, another problem that I know a lot of people have had. Instructions on how to build their settlements. It would seem that until the third or fourth playthrough, most people are not catching the opportunity to find out how to build their settlements. I have to tell you that the only way that I've seen every single instruction show up on my screen has been if I followed the game as linearly as possible in the beginning. They will walk you through how to build everything as long as you've been instructed to do it first. If you go into it of your own volition, you will get a rushed set of instructions, as I'm guessing the devs assumed you already know what you're doing. So if that's been the case with you, that's probably how you've missed the instruction. One of the other problems that I've seen, and it drives me up the wall, I can't imagine a good reason for this, is that size right there. Now, I understand setting a boundary on where you can build. I can understand setting a height requirement on where you can build because I understand the basics of game design. However, I don't understand a size limit on how many objects that I can place in here, as the only thing I can think of that would require is my VRAM, the amount of randomly accessed memory I have in my video card, or perhaps the random access memory I have on my computer. There just doesn't seem to be a good reason why it can't just render endless amounts of items should I choose to put them in here. For example, I wanted to, after I built everything and I had everything functioning, I wanted to put lighting around the entire establishment to make sure that there was no place that was necessarily dark when it became nighttime. Two problems with this. Number one, I found that placing lights very quickly runs up your size limit, as each and every single item you place in your settlement, regardless of size, regardless of cost, counts towards that size requirement. That's why you're able to do the size requirement trick of taking all of your guns out of your inventory, throwing them on the ground, throwing those into the workshop, and by doing so, it tricks your workshop into thinking you've removed permanent placed items from your base, and therefore reducing your settlement size. But if you'll see, here's another problem I've seen with lights. That light is powered. In fact, upon initial construction, every single light around my base worked. However, when I left my base and I came back, I found that half the lights just aren't turning on. No real reason for it. If I click on them and replace them, they will. And then when I leave and I come back again, not even necessarily the same lights, but multiple lights will no longer work. For some reason, the electrical grid is not functioning the way the devs probably intended it to. And we'll go over tricks on using the electrical grid and things like that later. We're going to move away here a little bit,
Why can't we just
and we're going to go over another thing that I have found to be rather distasteful. And it's an experience that I have seen, again, fixed in other games, fixed in other modern and recent games, that for some reason this is the only game that is really struggling to produce similar effects. And I don't like to think about it because that would mean that Bethesda, our great and wonderful RPG creator, is starting to fall behind on technology.
Look about you.
Maybe they should take tips from the Brotherhood. Alright. Let's find a nice tall point here. I apologize for the run. Hey! Alright, McGrady. Didn't know you learned how to teleport. Alright, we've got something similar to a sniper's perch up here. Now this is my play style through the game. This is how I played through every Fallout game the first time I played through it, all the way from Fallout 2 up until now. Fallout 1 was the game that I had to go back and play, but Fallout 2 was my first Fallout experience, and I've played every Fallout game since then.
Need any ammo?
However,
Spare.
this is the problem that I'm having. Here I'm able to zoom in with a sniper rifle on targets that are far away. I don't even have the longest zoom on this rifle because I found that putting the longest zoom on a rifle completely disables the use of the rifle. It makes it nearly impossible to use, as the distance you're able to see is incapable of being rendered by the game itself. The game's engine will not render objects that far away, despite what your settings may be, how fast your computer may be. And my computer is certainly more than fast enough to be able to render things that far away, as I play Minecraft with, you know, modded with, you know, intense graphics settings, and I have the distance draw on that set so far away that there's almost nothing that I can't see and maybe fire an arrow at. However, here there's things that I cannot see and fire my gun at, even though my gun is capable of reaching it, and my gun is capable of seeing it. So that has been yet another problem that I've found, especially with combat, especially with this style of play. It's just yet again a way that Fallout 4 has found a way to make you feel like you had options that it's not actually going to allow you to cultivate. And I don't need any running around to be able to tell you the next couple of problems, as I'm sure all of you have already experienced them if you played Fallout 4. It is a linear game. Do not expect to have a lot of good guy, bad guy choices. You're going to be a good guy. You're just going to be a good guy for the faction of your choice. That, at least, has been typical of, or has stayed typical in this game as far as related to the other Fallout games. There are factions. Choosing factions makes a difference in the way that the environment's going to perceive your character. Obviously, if you side with one faction who's an enemy of another, those enemies are now going to become your enemies. So if they were guys that didn't shoot at you before, they're going to shoot at you now. On the plus side, they don't actually make you make that decision until much later in the game. So if you want an easier playthrough for mid-level play, just be nice to everybody for a while. Go ahead and see what each faction has to offer and play with them for a little bit before you actually make that big decision, and you'll know when you're making it. Outside of that, quick save feature is great. Use it often. Bind the key if you want. That's really it. Good things about the game I've seen. Just the settlement building in general. The fact that this is even an option is just terrific. It really actually makes you feel like you're working to rebuild a post-apocalyptic world. Not in the extreme that I'd like to see it in, because I'd like to see the future of Fallout taking this idea, growing on it exponentially. It needs so much growth from this. This is as basic as I can imagine it, and it's extremely disappointing. But to grow from this, take away the boundaries, let you build anywhere, let you build nearly anything. I'd like to see an incorporation of what some of the other games have, where you are able to take multiple items from the environment and craft them together to create unique items. such as what is in the, I think it's called Dead Rising series, is popular for that.
Why can't the Institute just leave us alone?
I would also like to see a greater use of environmental destruction. There's just way too much that you can't touch. I don't like these bushes. They look like garbage. I'd like them gone, and the only way that I can do that is to actually completely cover them up. And that just doesn't seem fair to me, considering the fact that the gaming system, or the crafting system, is unforgiving in that regard. This is the trick I use to cover up the other bushes. So you can see it's possible to do, but it's a headache to get right, and in the end is just not an overly valuable use of time. Well, that's it. Captain Jaws on his first video. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please post in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'm going to be making several videos this week, hopefully to give some hints and tips in a fashion that you find enjoyable, and maybe even teach you something that you didn't know. Have a great day, YouTubers.